Today, I want to share with you 4 unsexy and unheard of businesses that can actually make you pretty rich. I think a lot of people look past the for sure opportunities where you can get for sure rich rather than maybe 1 out of 10 chance of getting rich. Entrepreneurship is romanticized. A lot of people talk about these like crazy up and coming trends and industries, but what they don't talk about is that most of those things have a 1 in 10 failure rate. So last week, I actually spoke at 2 different events, and I got to speak with, say, over 100 different people who were telling me about the businesses that they were starting. And it was a trend I started to notice. The first one was a guy who was telling me that he was starting a software for agencies. I asked him, have you done software before? Are you a developer? Do you have a background? No. Have you had an agency before? Have you run an agency? No. Interesting. Second example, a woman tells me that she's starting a social media marketing agency for NFT influencers. And she was like, well, I don't know much, but I know that they're really hot right now and they're trending. Okay, well, have you grown an influencer's account substantially before? And she was like, well, no, but that's why I'm starting the business. Interesting. Third guy tells me that he's starting AI for gyms, something I actually happen to know a lot about. I said, oh, amazing. What's your background in the gym industry? And he was like, well, I don't have one. I was like, okay, well, what's your background or connection with AI? And he was like, well, I don't have one. I just heard AI is the next thing. Interesting. Here's the thing. 90% of startups fail. If you want to set yourself up for success, the last thing you want to do is pick something you have no experience in, you have no way to educate yourself about, you also have no cash flow and no money to go educate yourself about or get the experience, and it's all hard. So instead, what I would beg you to do is consider doing a boring business. Consider something that's been proven, it's stable, and that maybe your skill set matches one of these businesses. Because I'm gonna name off these 4 businesses and what I have come to find as the industry norms for each of them, and think to yourself, do I have expertise here? Do I have experience in this area? Is this a business that I feel like is a worthy challenge for me? So the first business that a lot of people don't think about is e-bike rentals. The startup cost for an e-bike rental is typically around $25,000, so it's really low barrier to entry. The profit margins of this business are great. They're about 60%. It's a low startup cost, it has high profitability, and most of anything, if you look at what affects the business, it's really where you pick in terms of the region that you're going to be there. Is there a lot of tourism? Is there not tourism? Do people ride bikes a lot? How's the public transport? Those are the things that you want to be looking at when starting one of these businesses. The second business is tent rentals for events. This business actually only costs about between $30,000 and $40,000 in startup costs. The average profit margin is about 50%, which is great for having all that inventory. Now, what affects the profitability of that business and how much money you're gonna make? Is there tourism? Is there not? Is this a hot area to have events? What's the weather like in that region? How often are people going to be renting tents? Is it year-round or is it seasonal? Are you going to charge more for weekends, nights, etc.? The odd hours where you'd have to send staff to staff up and it's gonna be harder to find the staff. Those are the things that typically affect that business. A lot of business owners, when they start their first business, I see a lot of them get really discouraged because they pick a business that's really hard and then they fail and then they don't want to go do business again. If you're trying to get into business, you're trying to pick a business and you don't know where to start, I wouldn't pick something super complicated. If you were going into real estate, for example, there's a reason that a bank isn't going to give you a $10 billion loan because you've never done real estate. So then why set yourself up for failure in business by picking such a hard business? You're not qualified to run it. Pick a business that's already been done before, it's been proven, you know there's product market fit, and it's not super complicated, because then that business, what it's gonna do for you is it's gonna, at minimum, provide you with the confidence that you can do this. What often is the barrier is that we're not confident in ourselves. And so what's even worse is when you're not confident and then you start and then you fail and then you feel worse about yourself and you think, what's wrong with me? That's why I like these boring businesses, because they give people a better shot at success. The third one is daycare. There's 2 ways that you can do it. When you are doing an excess capacity model, it's only about $10,000 to start up. Excess capacity means this: you find an existing business that doesn't use part of their facility for certain hours. So a good example is school. They don't use their classrooms after school. So why not set up a daycare in one of their classrooms? They're not using it after 3 p.m., so you could ask them if you could rent it out. Another one might be a gym. Why not ask the gym if during the hours where they're not running classes, you could have a daycare in there? So it's using someone else's excess capacity to run your business. Now, if you're not using excess capacity, it might be more like $30,000 as startup costs. So the profit margin on this business is not as good. It's usually between 15 and 25%, which is why I like the excess capacity model. Because if you can only put down $10,000 to start and you're just using someone else's space, there's very low risk. And yes, there's less reward, but it's something that I feel like a lot of moms, for example, could start in their free time. And then the last business is definitely by far the highest startup cost of about $170,000, but it is funeral services. So I feel like a lot of people don't want to get into this, and a lot of industries where people don't want to get into them are good to get into. The profit margins on average are between 50 and 70%. And so yes, it has a higher startup cost. It's about the same cost as like the average franchise. However, the upside can be really big, especially if you tweak your services so that you're charging for the right thing. So when I was researching this, the average profit margin is mainly affected by upsells and downsells. What ancillary products are you selling them besides maybe providing them for a space for the funeral, providing them with a coffin? What are the other things that they're going to be purchasing for that day or for that ceremony? If you can provide those as upsells and downsells, then you are more likely to have a higher profit margin.